And I want to now turn to one of President Biden's closest supporters in the Senate, Democratic Senator Chris Coons of Delaware, also a member of the Foreign Relations Committee. You just heard your colleague across the aisle talking about the fact that he doesn't feel like Joe Biden and the White House is really negotiating in earnest with them. I want to talk about that in a second, but start by asking you specifically about the push to increase the minimum wage inside that package. A $15 minimum wage was included in the House bill. The Senate parliamentarian says it doesn't work as part of the COVID bill. So as an alternative, Senators Bernie Sanders and Ron Wyden are pushing proposals that would penalize companies that pay their employees less than $15 an hour. Is that something that you support?
Well, Dana, I haven't seen the details of that proposal yet. And if I'm someone who is always willing to negotiate with Republicans, I'm willing to negotiate with Democrats as well. Let's start with what we all agree on, that the federal minimum wage of $7.25 is too low. It has to be raised. Every Democrat and many Republicans agree with that. President Biden has called for us to raise it to $15 an hour. Senator Sanders' bill would have done that over 4 years to 2025. We haven't seen this new proposal. This isn't the last bill we will adopt this year. There may be several other chances for us to move a minimum wage bill, but I look forward to hearing from Senators Sanders and Wyden this week.
Let's talk about what you just heard from Senator Bill Cassidy, that it's a joke that the White House has actually reached out in earnest to Republicans to negotiate on this COVID relief bill. What's your response to that?
Well, as you know, there were 10 Republican senators who were the first senators to sit down in the Oval Office with President Biden. This bill has the support not just of 76% of all Americans, but 60% of all Republicans in recent polling. So, as Senator Cassidy said, we should listen to our voters. And the majority of the American people, the overwhelming majority of the American people and of both parties, are urging us to act. President Biden is someone who will work across the aisle. I was encouraged to hear Senator Cassidy say, regardless of the outcome of this stimulus bill, this COVID response bill, he is going to work across the aisle. I've been a good friend and partner with him working on national service issues, for example. So I think President Biden challenged us to do two things: to deliver relief to the American people to this ongoing pandemic and the recession caused by it, and to find ways to work across the aisle. The urgency of this issue means he's moving ahead, and we're moving ahead with this $1.9 trillion bill that has broad support amongst voters of all backgrounds and parties.
I hear you on that, and talking is big because there hasn't been enough of that in this town. But talking is one thing, and actually making concessions and doing deals on something like this is a different thing. And he's saying that there was no real effort on that. That's fair, don't you think?
What is fair is that President Biden and the Democrats in Congress gave several weeks for there to be a serious negotiation that came close to the scope and range of this challenge. The proposals that came forward weren't anything like the scale of the challenge. And so, frankly, we're moving ahead with a bill that probably will get no Republican votes in the Senate, but will have broad Republican support in the country. My hope is that after we pass this bill, we will then move towards bipartisan legislating on a whole range of other issues, whether it's immigration or criminal justice reform or national service or other topics that you know well, Dana, I've worked hard across the aisle on in the last Congress and intend to in this Congress.
Last summer, Senator, you told Politico, quote, "I will not stand idly by for 4 years and watch the Biden administration's initiatives blocked at every turn." Progressives say that's exactly what's happening with the minimum wage increase. How do you respond to that?
Well, this is the first major bill to come through Congress during the Biden administration. I am certain that President Biden is committed to raising the minimum wage, to raising it to $15 an hour. We'll see what proposal Senator Sanders has this week. But I don't think we should throw up the white flag and say, well, there's no way that we can work with Republicans when this is literally the first major piece of legislation to come through. We will have other chances to pass bold legislation in this Congress in this year, but we have to give bipartisanship a chance.
I want to turn to foreign policy and the White House report that Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman approved the operation that killed journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Despite that conclusion, President Biden is not directly punishing him. In 2018, Senator, you introduced a resolution to hold the Crown Prince personally accountable and said at the time that failure to do so would, quote, profoundly weaken our country. So does Biden's failure to hold the Crown Prince accountable weaken America?
From his first day as president, President Biden and his foreign policy team have been working to recalibrate our relationship with the Saudi kingdom. I was one of a group of senators who pressed for the release of the Director of National Intelligence Office report on Khashoggi's responsibility, on the responsibility of MBS for the murder of Khashoggi to be released. President Trump refused to do that. Republicans in the Senate refused to press him successfully to do that. President Biden has now done that. And he's imposed a new rule, a new visa sanction against 76 Saudis, some senior Saudis, because of their role, and set a new standard for those who would go after dissidents and journalists around the world.
But the Coons standard in 2018 was that the Crown Prince specifically needs to be held to justice. Is he getting away with murder now?
We are not yet done with recalibrating the relationship between the United States and the Saudi kingdom. And I respect the way that President Biden has elevated human rights. President Trump was someone who frankly put arms deals and their willingness to work with us to confront a dangerous regime in Iran far ahead of any human rights concerns. And I am optimistic that our role in terms of the war in Yemen, the accountability here for Khashoggi's murder, and other ways in which the U.S.-Saudi relationship may change will in fact deliver the accountability that I called for. But I also recognize the reality that the Crown Prince is largely in control of the Saudi kingdom and may well be so for decades. This is a critical relationship. Balancing human rights and our regional interests and security is part of the hard work of diplomacy. But I think President Biden and his senior team have already taken bolder steps than ever were seen in the last 4 years.
So you're comfortable with where they are now? You don't think that the Crown Prince should be punished specifically and directly?
I look forward to having ongoing conversations with the administration about this issue as the U.S.-Saudi relationship is recalibrated.
Senator Chris Coons, thank you so much for joining me this morning. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dana.